I was sitting on that crinkly paper they put over the exam tables in the doctor's office, my legs dangling off the edge, feeling like a little kid waiting for the principal. The fluorescent lights were humming above me. My doctor, a good man but a busy man, was looking at a digital tablet instead of looking at my face. I had just finished explaining to him what was happening to me at 2 in the morning. I told him about the sudden violent pain in my calf muscle that was waking me up out of a dead sleep. I told him how my leg would lock up so hard it felt like a steel cable snapping tight under my skin. I told him how I had to drag myself out of bed, sweating, trying not to wake my wife Linda, and stand on the cold hardwood floor just praying for the muscle to release. He nodded, tapped a few things into his screen, and gave me the same advice I am sure you have heard 100 times. He told me it was just a normal part of getting older. He told me I was probably just a little dehydrated. He looked up over his glasses and told me to drink a glass of water before bed and maybe eat a banana. I nodded, shook his hand, and walked out to my truck feeling completely invisible. I knew in my gut he was wrong. I knew this was not just about water. I spent 3 decades managing a freight warehouse right here in Knoxville. For 30 years, my legs were my livelihood. I worked on solid concrete floors. I wore heavy steel-toed boots. I climbed up and down the metal steps of loading docks in the dead of winter and the heat of summer. I carried weight, I shifted pallets, I moved constantly. My body was a tool, and I relied on it to do exactly what I asked it to do. When you live that way, you develop a deep trust in your own foundation. You know what your legs are capable of. So when I retired, I naturally assumed that foundation would hold. I thought I had built up enough strength to last me the rest of the ride. But time has a funny way of finding the cracks in your foundation. In my late 60s, things started to shift. The stairs in our house seemed to demand a little more effort. Getting out of a low chair required a push off the armrests. And then the night cramps started. They did not start as a gentle ache, they started as an ambush. If you have never had a true nighttime calf cramp, it is hard to explain the sheer panic of it. You are deep in a dream, completely relaxed, and in a fraction of a second, your nervous system throws a spark. The muscle in the back of your leg seizes with a violence that takes your breath away. You reach down and grab your own leg, and the muscle feels like a solid block of wood. It is a knot so tight you can actually feel it under the skin. It feels like the muscle is trying to tear itself off the bone. And the worst part is the helplessness. You cannot massage it away with your hands. You cannot just stretch it out easily. You have to endure it. And when it finally fades, 10 or 15 minutes later, it leaves behind a dull, heavy ache that stays with you the entire next day. Your leg feels bruised. You walk with a slight limp. But the physical pain is only half the problem. The real damage happens in your mind. You start to become afraid of going to sleep. You lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, keeping your legs perfectly still, terrified that if you shift your weight or point your toes the wrong way, the trap will snap shut again. Your sleep quality plummets. You wake up exhausted. And when you are exhausted, your balance is off, your energy is gone, and you start moving less. You start staying in your chair a little longer. You stop taking the long walks in the neighborhood. You start shrinking your world because you do not trust your own legs to carry you through it. I realized I was letting a muscle cramp dictate how I live my life. And I realized that the doctor's advice to just drink more water was not going to save me. My daughter Megan is an occupational therapist. She spends her days working with older folks who are struggling to maintain their mobility. She came over for Sunday dinner, and I was moving pretty slow. I had had a terrible cramp the night before, and my right calf was screaming at me every time I put weight on it. I sat down at the kitchen table with a heavy sigh, and she immediately knew something was wrong. I finally admitted what was happening. I told her I was waking up in agony and that the water and bananas were doing absolutely nothing. Megan did not dismiss it. She did not tell me it was just my age. She pulled up a chair, poured herself a cup of coffee, and told me exactly what was going on. She told me I was not alone. She said she had just read a massive review on muscle cramps, and the numbers were staggering. More than 1 in 3 Americans over the age of 60 deal with these exact same nighttime leg cramps. Millions of people are lying awake in the dark, clutching their calves, thinking their bodies are just wearing out. Megan explained that right now there are no magic prescription pills that can cure this. The medical community does not have a drug for it. But she told me there were mechanical and physical solutions that could stop the cramps dead in their tracks. She gave me a list of 4 specific things to do, 4 habits that I needed to change that very night. She promised me that if I did these 4 things, I could shut down the cramps and get my sleep back. The first 3 things she taught me cost absolutely nothing. They were just changes in how I handled my body. The 4th thing was a simple addition to my evening routine that completely changed the chemistry of my muscles. I am going to walk you through exactly what she told me, one by one, because these 4 steps gave me my life back. The first thing Megan asked me about was my bed. Specifically, she asked me how Linda makes the bed. Linda is a wonderful woman, but she makes a bed like a drill sergeant. The sheets are pulled tight, the blankets are heavy, and the foot of the bed is tucked in under the mattress so securely you could bounce a quarter off it. Megan smiled and told me that was my first enemy. When you slide into a bed with tightly tucked sheets and you lie on your back, those heavy blankets push your feet down. They force your toes to point straight out. In the medical world, they call that plantar flexion. What it means for you and me is that the calf muscle is put into a shortened, completely contracted position. And you are holding it in that tight, shortened position for 6, 7, or 8 hours while you sleep. The muscle never gets a chance to lengthen. The circulation slows down. The muscle fibers get irritated. And eventually they cramp. The very first rule Megan gave me was to untuck the sheets at the foot of the bed. It sounds ridiculously simple, but it is deeply profound. You have to give your feet room to move. You need to be able to let your toes point up toward the ceiling without fighting the weight of the blankets. That night I pulled the sheets loose from the bottom of the mattress. Linda gave me a look, but she let me do it. Just that simple act of freeing my feet took an enormous amount of pressure off my calf muscles. But untucking the sheets was only the beginning. The second step was about re-educating the muscle before I went to sleep. Megan explained that my calves were tight from a lifetime of walking on concrete, and they needed to be reminded of how to stretch before they were expected to rest. She taught me a simple movement to do right there in bed. I did not even have to stand up. I just lay flat on my back, rested my head on the pillow, and focused on my feet. The exercise was just pointing and pulling. I would point my toes down toward the end of the bed as far as they would go, holding it for just a second. And then, here's the important part, I would pull my toes back up toward my shins as hard as I could. I would feel that deep, intense stretch running all the way up the back of my calf, right behind my knee. It woke the whole leg up. Megan told me to do that 10 or 12 times on each leg every single night before I turned off the lamp. Point down, pull up, point down, pull up. The first time I did it, I could feel little twitches in my feet and toes. The muscles were protesting because they were not used to being stretched like that. But after a few days, that pulling motion started to feel like a deep relief. It was pumping fresh blood into the lower leg. It was physically lengthening the muscle fibers so they would not snap tight in the middle of the night. It became my nightly ritual. The third thing she taught me was a rescue technique. It was a way to fix the cramp if it still managed to sneak up on me, and a way to iron out the tight spots before they turned into a problem. Usually, when a cramp hits, you try to reach down with your hands to rub it, but when you do that, you are bending forward, tensing your back, and using your weak hand muscles to fight a massive, powerful leg muscle. You never win that fight. Megan showed me how to use my own body weight to do the work. If you are lying on your back and you feel that tightness in your right calf, you just bend your left leg so your left knee is pointing up at the ceiling. Then you lift your right leg and lay the heavy, meaty part of your cramped calf directly over your left kneecap. Your kneecap becomes a massage tool. You just let the weight of your leg rest on that bone, and you slowly slide your calf back and forth over your knee. You stroke it up and down. You will immediately find tender spots. You will hit a knot that makes you wince a little bit. When you find that spot, you do not run from it. You just gently rub back and forth over it 6 to 10 times. You are in complete control of the pressure. If it hurts too much, you just lift the leg a little. If you need more pressure, you let the leg sink heavy onto the bone. It is an incredibly powerful, deep tissue massage, and you do not even have to sit up or turn on the light to do it. You can do it in the dark. I started doing this every night before I went to sleep, just feeling around my calf for tight spots and ironing them out on my opposite knee. I realized that my legs were carrying dozens of these tiny, tight knots that I had been ignoring for years. Those 3 mechanical tricks reduced my cramps drastically. But the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that shut the door on the problem completely, was the 4th step. This goes back to the chemistry of the muscle. For years, I had tried taking those cheap magnesium pills from the grocery store. I thought I was doing the right thing, but my digestion is not what it used to be. Most older folks have a hard time absorbing minerals through their stomach. The pills were just passing right through me without ever reaching my legs. Megan told me to bypass the stomach entirely. She told me to buy a bottle of topical magnesium. It comes as a lotion or an oil. The skin is the largest organ in your body, and it absorbs things incredibly fast. Every night after I did my stretches and rubbed my calves over my kneecaps, I would take a small amount of that magnesium lotion and rub it directly into the skin of my lower legs. The magnesium goes straight through the tissue and right into the muscle where it is needed most. Magnesium is the mineral that tells the muscle to relax. When you rub it right onto the calf, you are literally feeding the muscle the exact signal it needs to let go and rest. I want to tell you about a guy I run into at the hardware store every few weeks. His name is Frank. Frank is 71 years old, and he is a retired electrician. I saw him leaning against the counter near the register a few months ago, and he looked exhausted. He had dark circles under his eyes, and he was shifting his weight from foot to foot, like he could not get comfortable. I asked him how he was doing, and he just shook his head. He told me he was getting torn apart by night cramps. He said he was lucky to get 3 hours of sleep at a time. Frank had recently been put on a diuretic, a water pill for his blood pressure. Those medications are famous for flushing all the electrolytes and minerals right out of your system. They dry your muscles out and leave your nerves completely exposed. His doctor had told him the same thing mine told me. Drink water, eat a banana. Frank was miserable. I asked Frank to walk outside with me for a minute. We stood by his truck, and I told him the exact same 4 things Megan had told me. I told him to go home and kick the sheets loose at the bottom of the bed. I showed him how to point and pull his toes while lying flat on his back. I explained how to use his own kneecap to massage the knots out of his calves. And I told him to go to the health food store and buy a bottle of topical magnesium lotion and rub it into his legs every single night. Frank is an old school guy. He looked at me like I was trying to sell him snake oil. He wanted a pill from a doctor, not a stretching routine from a guy who used to run a warehouse. But he was in enough pain that he agreed to try it. I did not see Frank again for almost 6 weeks. When I finally bumped into him in the plumbing aisle, he practically marched over to me. He looked 10 years younger. The dark circles were gone. He grabbed my shoulder and told me that the very first night he untucked those sheets and used that magnesium lotion, he slept straight through until the sun came up. He said he had been doing the ankle stretches every morning before he got out of bed and every night before he went to sleep, and his legs felt looser than they had in a decade. He told me that for the first time in months he wasn't dreading going to bed. He had his evenings back. That is the real victory here. It is not just about stopping a muscle from twitching. It is about taking the fear out of your nights. When you stop worrying about the cramps, your entire nervous system calms down. You sink into a deeper, more restorative sleep. When you sleep deeply, your body repairs itself. You wake up with actual energy. Your mood is better. You have more patience with your spouse. You have more stamina for your grandkids. And most importantly, you stop guarding your legs. You stop hesitating before you take a long walk. You stop looking at a set of stairs like it is a punishment. You reclaim your territory. We spend so much of our lives ignoring our bodies when they are working well. We take them for granted. And when they start to complain, our first instinct is to get angry at them or to feel betrayed. We think our bodies are failing us. But your body is not failing you. It is just asking for help. It is communicating the only way it knows how. A cramp is just a loud alarm bell telling you that a muscle is stuck, that it is starved for minerals, and that it needs to move differently. When you learn how to answer that alarm, when you learn how to untrap the foot, stretch the fibers, iron out the knots, and feed the tissue, the body responds beautifully. It wants to heal. It wants to support you. You just have to give it the right tools. You do not have to settle for terrible sleep and bruised legs just because you have crossed the threshold of 60 or 70 years old. You do not have to accept pain as a roommate. Tonight, when you get ready for bed, I want you to make a choice. I want you to walk over to the foot of your bed and pull those sheets completely loose. Give your feet room to breathe. When you lie down, I want you to point those toes down and pull them hard up toward your shins 10 times. Wake those calves up. If you feel a tight spot, drag it over your opposite knee and rub it out. And tomorrow, go get yourself some magnesium lotion. Stop waiting for someone in a white coat to hand you a magic pill that does not exist. Take control of your own foundation. Your legs carry your freedom. Do not let anything steal that away from you in the dark. Start fixing it tonight. I am going to keep sharing the things I have learned the hard way, because none of us should have to walk this road completely blind. I will be right here.